is Seth Meyers taking over late night for Jimmy Fallon, February 24th. You've been with Saturday Night Live 11 years?
I think it's going to end up being 12 and a half years.
12 and a half years.
I started in 2001.
What was your audition like?
Well, just to timestamp 2001, I think the impressions I did were Russell Crowe, Hugh Grant, and David Arquette. So those are not of the moment. Those are of that moment. And then, it's 5 minutes on the SNL monologue stage. That's where you audition. And you write your own audition. And I did some characters as well. But it's insane because you can see yourself on the monitors and it looks the way you would look if you were hosting SNL while you're auditioning.
Who's in the audience?
Lorne Michaels. When I was auditioning, Tina Fey was there, some other writers. Now I'm on the other side of it. And I try to laugh very hard when I watch people do it now because I remember how quiet I can get.
But is it fake laugh?
I think I nervous laugh. It's so terrifying to watch somebody go up there and audition for that show. Just because there's so much history and you can tell how nervous people are. So I think that nerve then transfers to me and I have a very high-pitched, nervous, girlish laugh.
Who killed it? Best one you ever saw?
Kristen Wiig. Kristen Wiig, 2 lines in, it was okay, great. So we're going to hire her. She'll be on the show for 7 years. That's great. So we have that done. But that was the best I ever saw.
Have you seen somebody fail who turned out to be very successful?
I don't. Yes. But not fail. I don't think anybody's ever bombed that's gone on to be successful. There are people that have come through and ended up being great on other things. Jordan Peele of Key and Peele.
Oh yeah,
he came through, but he was great. And I've known him for years, but he was really good.
Yeah, I would think that would be so intimidating that you're in that set, in that studio, everybody who's come before you, and your life is flashing before you because you're thinking, what if I screw up here? What do I go back to?
Well, that was the thing for me is the morning of, I was it's just 5 minutes. You can get through it. Just 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. And then right beforehand, I was well, don't just get through it. I try to make it 5 minutes that counts because this could be a pretty important 5 minutes. But I remember the guy came up and put the microphone on me and he's so we're going to count you down, then say your name and go. And I was and you'll count down from 3? And he's yes. And I was and then will you say the 1 or will the 1 be silent? Because I knew as soon as he left, I'd have to do it. So I just wanted to keep him there as long as possible.
Best guest host?
I get asked that a lot. They're all, so many more are good than bad. It's hard to argue that anyone's better than Timberlake. It's always fun for me when someone like John Hamm comes in that you don't know is funny until he shows up. It's a gift every time he comes and hosts. Julie Louis-Dreyfus for me was one that
Were you there when Steven Seagal was there?
I was not. I missed Steven Seagal.
Because I heard he was a nightmare.
I heard he was a nightmare too.
They couldn't get him out of his dressing room and
Yeah, it's a really interesting place to try and be a diva because there's just no time for it. We just have to do a whole show. We have to write a 90-minute show and learn it and rehearse it and get it all done by Saturday. So when people won't come out of their dressing rooms, you kind of want to be oh, well, you just aren't in that sketch anymore. We had to move on. So.
Without naming names, most difficult host, is there a story attached to it?
I would say that this is a thing that happens with difficult hosts is when they have something that they're sort of famous for, maybe a scandal, maybe or something about their personal life that is almost why they're famous, and then they want that to be off limits.
So Lindsay Lohan.
But Lindsay's never been. She's always been a really good sport.
Okay.
And we've had Lindsay in every stage of her career.
She's got a career?
We all have careers. But no, she's been a good sport. We've had others that haven't been. But, I will say, part of the benefit of the show being on for as many years, nobody shows up and doesn't know how it works. It's very rare for people to be oh, so I have to be here all week. They know the game. And, at this point, if you're hosting the show, it's very rare for people not to have talked to friends of theirs who have hosted it. They rarely come in with no sense of what they've gotten their toes into.
He's Seth Meyers. He takes over late night for Jimmy Fallon, February 24th. Why?
Why am I taking over for him?
Yeah, what was it?
It's an excellent
always
question.
Always wanted to?
No, I always wanted to do SNL. That was my dream. And then being there, you start realizing you can't do it forever. And the biggest stress for me was trying to figure out what I would do next that wouldn't be boring compared to SNL. So when this came up, I get to stay in the building. I get to stay with Lorne. And you get to, the most exciting part about SNL is just filling the real estate. When you have to do 90 minutes a week. Now, obviously, with late night, it's even more than 90 minutes. But I feel like when you're a writer and when you have a writing staff, the best stuff comes out of like that desperate need to like fill time.
When you see who's contagious, like was there a guest host that was just you kind of gravitated towards them? You were like, what am I doing here? It's like an out of body experience that they were that good, or
Oh, I mean, it's really, there's been so many that sort of blow you away. Not to go back to Timberlake, but like he's one of those people whose his first instinct is really just kind of stunning to watch. I will say, like the people that we've had, like Jamie Foxx last year at the table read, you kind of were like, oh right, he was a comedian
He's really
first.
funny.
He's really funny. He's one of the best ever. And Jim Carrey, I remember at like the pitch meeting for Jim Carrey, I think it's 2 years ago now that he came and hosted. Like he was one of the most magnetic people I've ever sort of just watched sit in a chair. Like watching the way he just sat and listened, I was like, oh, right. When you were getting $20 million a movie, you were worth every penny.
But there's different grades, different levels of comedic talent. There's certain guys who are in the room, you notice me. The other guy's very sneaky. Your style, you gravitate towards what? You seem to be sneaky funny.
Oh, thank you.
No, but do you prefer it like that instead of?
I do. I mean, I feel like the best. Why I was always as soon as I started on the show, I sort of saw the other people on the show, and I was like, oh, I don't have any of these skill sets. Like they're all better at everything than I am. The one thing I sort of felt like the space that you could fill is sort of playing straight man. Like I'm perfectly happy being next to someone who's funnier than me, which is why getting Weekend Update was such a gift for me. Like that was the job I always wanted on the show.
But you have to suppress your ego a little bit, don't you?
You do, but I mean, it's not like you don't also get the credit. Like Stefan with Bill Hader is a perfect example. Like people talk to me all the time like I'm doing any of the heavy lifting there. They're like, I love you and Stefan. I'm like, all I'm doing is asking him questions.
You're just being yourself.
Yeah. But like once I realized you can it is like
there's a quality to it though. There
Yes.
really is. And it's hard to do it because you want to be more. Or you see other people want to be more. It's hard to go, I don't mind being less.
I mean, I think if you put yourself in the mind of like you get to be the point guard of the show, like I've taken a lot of pride in like the way I can like both with like writing and on Weekend Update. Like if I can dish out 10 assists a night, I feel like that's my job on the show. We have plenty of people who can score. So it's just like trying to like help them facilitate that.
But it helps you with your transition of taking over for Fallon because your job is to make your guest be the most entertaining or important person.
I will say the one thing I'm nervous about is people like, you're so good at it with people like Stefan. I'm like, that's fully written. Like that the level of difficulty is so much lower when I know what he's going to say. But that will be the biggest challenge. And I think, a thing you can't learn except from doing, like you can't practice interviewing people as much as you have to sort of do it and learn your own rhythms.
Well, you just have to listen.
Yes.
That's all.
I have said it is funny because I've been like I'm going to try harder. Like when I sort of this came down in Friday, I guess it was last April. I was like I'm going to do better listening in conversations, and I found myself like listening to people that I can't believe I've never listened to, like family members.
Yeah.
Like you're a pretty interesting person, Aunt Alex.
As you say that to your wife.
Yeah.
Honey, I didn't know you were this interesting. I just started listening to you.
Yeah.
I asked the crew of Saturday Night Live, the camera crew,
Yeah.
the real people there.
Yeah.
I said, give me a couple of skits that come to mind
Okay.
with Seth Meyers. Cork Suckers.
Yep. I was in, I believe it's Cork Soakers.
Soakers.
Yeah.
Oh, they said suckers.
Yeah, well,
Cork Soakers.
yes. That took place in an Italian vineyard.
Yes.
I had only one line in that sketch, I believe, but that was a scene about the winery that like soaks the corks so they can fit into the wine bottles.
So you were cork, not suckers.
No, we were cork soakers.
You were
Yes.
soaking it.
Yeah.
Terrible golfer.
Terrible golfer. That I think was Charles Barkley. That was a Charles Barkley sketch.
Okay. Did you write it?
I didn't write it. I don't know why they think of me. This is, by the way, when you're a straight man, they're like, what sketches do you remember before? And they just start saying other sketches.
Newly married.
Newly married. Oh, we did I'm guessing that's Amy Poehler and I used to do a thing about the couple that should be divorced. Because I feel like everybody knows one of those.
Little sleuths.
Little sleuths. That's that one cuts deep. It's actually funny. John Goodman's hosting this week.
Yeah.
John Goodman hosted my 4th show in 2001. And Amy Poehler and I did a sketch called Little Sleuths, which was sort of like an Encyclopedia Brown and his sister, but that we solved like a grisly murder. And it was great. It was like the last sketch of the John Goodman show that year, and we thought we had a franchise. It was like our first year, and Poehler and I were like, oh my God, Little Sleuths is going to buy us a house. And then we tried it like 8 more times. It never got by dress. And we always say that the only mystery the Little Sleuths couldn't solve is who killed the Little Sleuths.
We'll continue with Seth Meyers. I got to ask you about the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
Happily.
And if the White House has to approve your jokes. He takes over for Jimmy Fallon February 24th. So it's John Goodman, Kings of Leon, this next Saturday night. All right. I'm going to ask you about the musical acts that have come through. And you finally got some rock and roll in there. With, too much pop.
Well,
come on.
Look, it's a show.
Come on.
It's a show for all generations.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, how about some music for me then, Seth?
We'll get it for you.
I couldn't imagine what it'd be like with Mohr, because he doesn't strike me as a guy who laughs easily.
When he laughs big, which is nice. So you know he has the ability.
So he laughs real.
Yeah, but he doesn't laugh easily. The worst thing with Lauren is when you're like sitting at the table read on Wednesday, and like someone's written some piece like that's maybe like a little blue or a little like not his taste, and it's really making you laugh, and then you turn to Lauren, and Lauren's just staring at you. Like sometimes he'll just be looking at you laughing.
He takes over for Jimmy Fallon late night, February 24th. He's Seth Meyers, kind enough to stay with us. Steeler apologist. Do you think Mike Tomlin actually tried to get in the way of Jacoby Jones on Thanksgiving night?
I did when I saw it. I kind of believe him a little bit after his press conference, but I certainly did when I saw it.
I had no stake in the game. I just thought he was drifting perilously close to actually being on the field. And I thought he probably tried to interrupt play, or at least give the impression that he might be able to.
Whether he meant it or not, I think the fine is fair. I think a draft pick would be insane.
Well, because then it feels like it's organizational.
Yeah.
Because you can't penalize the organization. I can penalize Tomlin. I shouldn't be able to penalize the
also,
organization.
it can't be like a thing like Spygate where like the organization, you're like, how could they not have known?
Yeah.
I don't believe that like the Rooneys are calling down being like, this is the sideline play.
What did you think of Peyton Manning's comedic timing?
The best. He was incredible. The most impressive thing Peyton did, aside from was so great in the live sketches, when we went out, the United Way scene we did, the best.
Yeah.
A couple of things I remember is he was throwing, he had to throw a Nerf ball into a kid's back, and it was a Nerf ball, but I remember we went up to him and I was like, can you throw it a little harder? And he was like, yeah, I can throw it harder. I'm Peyton Manning, but he would like improvise lines that were really funny, just on the fly. He's really just his timing's outstanding.
Who else have you had sports on? Barkley's always good.
The best. He's also just spending a week with Barkley is such a joy because you hear so many. He never is like, oh, I probably shouldn't tell that story. So that's great. We had Eli, who we really enjoyed. Eli was a lot of fun. He's a really good guy. He's really funny.
Brady,
great. He's like Brady is like a smooth operator. He's like the guy that when he leaves, you like hope you can still be friends. You're like, hey man, that was a great week. Here's my email if you ever want to check in.
# Tommy.
Yeah. So he was great. I'm trying to think of who else we've had. Early on in my time there, we had like Andy Roddick and Jeff Gordon. They were both, I would describe them as both an excellent tennis player and excellent race car driver.
Yeah. Don't quit your day job.
Yeah. I remember I played celebrity poker with Jeff Gordon, and he bluffed, and I called him, and he was like, how did you know I was bluffing? And I was like, I spent a week with you watching you try to be an actor. I know when you're faking it.
Oh, so this was a real celebrity poker.
Yeah, we played like Bravo Celebrity Poker, and I actually,
The White House Correspondents' Dinner was at 20. It's back in 11.
Yeah.
Okay. Do your jokes have to be approved by the White House?
They do not, which is great. It's really you're not. I learned this from doing it, but like you are actually like asked by the White House Correspondents Association. It does not come through the White House, so you're not actually like hired by the president. You're hired by the correspondent.
Okay. What's the one where you go? This could be trouble.
Well, I I guess I had a thing about how bad he looked, like how old he looked, and how, if his hair got any whiter, the Tea Party would endorse it. And I said, who you would have, who you would have trouble beating in an election, because this was when he was in his first term. I was like, who you'd have trouble against is 2008 Barack Obama. I was like, you would have loved that guy. And he laughed, though. He was a very, very good sport.
I would think there are times when you have a joke and you rehearsed it and then you're delivering it. And as you're delivering it, you're kind of watching the words come out of your mouth going,
yeah,
I wonder how he's... Now, were you worried about his reaction or the room's reaction?
Well, I talked to Robert Smigel, who had written it for Conan when he had done it years ago. And Smigel gave me the best advice, which was like, if you lose the president or the first lady, you lose the room, because the room can see them as well. And to some degree, it's more interesting to watch them react to the jokes than it is to watch the jokes itself. So it was like, I was pulling jokes on the fly. And the jokes I pulled were mostly jokes about Republicans, because I was noticing that when I made jokes about Republicans, especially Republicans who might run against him in 2012, that was when he was laughing less. And so those jokes weren't going as well, because I don't think he wanted to get... Whereas like the jokes about Trump, he couldn't have laughed hard.
But Trump didn't laugh.
No, Trump didn't laugh. Which was the best. I got so lucky that he didn't laugh and that the camera knew where he was. Such an awful shot of him, too. If there's one thing I feel bad of, he had that like old man in the mountain framing of just a profile in like a sea of laughing faces. Like just a perfect shot to like catch a solitary tear.
Well, I was listening to Jay Mohr roast Danica Patrick at the NASCAR. Do you have that? You got that joke there, the Jay Mohr? And Danica didn't laugh. I think this is a very... can you play that? There's 2 days. Okay, here's Jay Mohr at the NASCAR awards dinner.
Danica Patrick, yes. Round of applause for a history maker. Danica Patrick is here. Welcome, my love. Yes. Danica, I hope you're not too uncomfortable tonight. I know you're not used to being this close to the front. It's a comedy show. Jeez Louise.
She did not laugh.
Yeah. I would have... It's not a terrible joke, but you have to... It's a tough... You have to weigh whether or not it's worth telling.
Would you have told that?
I don't know. I mean, I did the ESPYs a bunch, and there's probably like 3 or 4...
Did you upset anybody at night of the ESPYs?
I don't think so. I think I got away okay when I did the ESPYs.
Yeah.
You were talking about Norm Macdonald doing it earlier.
Yeah.
The best.
Yeah.
Like, he set the ESPYs back like 15 years.
But what I loved about Norm is he didn't care.
No, that was, I feel like that, it took the ESPN people like 15 years before they were like willing to like hand the keys to a comedian again.
Well, then Will Ferrell did his Harry Carey impersonation.
Yeah.
And then he started picking on John Elway and his teeth.
Mm-hmm.
And then Barry Bonds, Ken Griffey Jr. And it was awkward.
Well, the OJ joke with Charles Woodson.
Yes.
That was the best.
That was, yeah. It was the best.
That was the best joke that they can never take this Heisman away from you unless you murder your wife and a waiter.
Yeah. But is awkward good for a comedian?
I like that still an awkward joke all these years later.
No, it is. It's still awkward. Yeah.
Awkward is okay. You just have to be aware that, like, awkward's bad if you get caught off guard. Like, that, I guess, is... It seems like Jay knew that was going to get a groan because he had its comedy show ready.
Yeah.
So then it's fine. Like, I like to have a few groaners every time you do anything. Like, those are the most fun. Certainly, when I do events all the time, I do charity events in New York all the time. I just, like, hosted, like, the Glamour Women of the Year Awards. And you're always going in with, like, 2 or 3 that are, like, for you. Like, you want to have the jokes that, like, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to give up my night for a great event. But I also want to have, like, 2 jokes that I'm really happy I told.
Your dream guest for that first show?
Well, I've got Amy Poehler locked down for my first guest. I would love to have like Hillary Clinton for a second guest. I tried to actually at the Glamour Women of the Year Awards tried to lock her down.
That's why you did the Glamour.
Well, look, it was a great year for women. I did it for that.
And I think you have to have Hillary first and then Amy Poehler.
No, the whole thing is Amy will only be first guest. No, Amy and I have been laughing that we want her to be first, and then we want like someone huge second. Like just Tom Cruise having to sit second.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
Yeah. Someone like that. I will say like that is this pressure of like who you book is you're like, oh, right, this is why this is so hard.
But you get along with Fallon,
Yeah, very well.
Kimmel,
Yep.
Leno?
Leno's been great for me.
Letterman?
Yeah, I mean, I've had such a good time on a show. Yeah. No feuds.
Arsenio?
I haven't, I've never met Arsenio.
Okay.
I will say he looks the best of all of us. Like, it's like he's the youngest guy in late night right now.
I thought they were reruns.
Yeah, he's amazing. Yeah.
But I need you to have friction. There has to be like,
Well, give it time, you know. I've been on the sidelines. I feel like once I get out there,
could you take Kimmel lost weight? You don't think you could take Kimmel?
I don't think I could take anyone.
What about Fallon?
No, I don't think so.
Letterman's old. You can take Letterman.
I don't know though. I bet he's got like old man strength. He looks like one of those guys that you like think you can take, and the next thing you know, you're over his head and he's got you by the belt.
Well, he's from the Midwest. He could probably.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, he
That's
could
what I
probably
mean.
wrestle. So it's February 24th. It's late night. Seth Meyers taking over, and you'll still stay at Saturday Night Live. Or are you done?
I will. I don't think I'll ever be doing both.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's it.
I think so.
What about Lauren Michaels' job when Lauren leaves?
I think that once Lauren leaves, they won't be a job. I think that show needs Lauren.
But when he goes?
I don't know if the show will keep going.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks for coming in.
My pleasure. It's been great.
And it was a compliment that I said you're sneaky funny.
No, I took it as a compliment.
I didn't say you're surprisingly funny.
That's true. That would have been worse.
Thank you. Thank you, Seth.
Of course.
The Dan Patrick Show, weekday mornings on Audience.